Thank you for joining us for this episode of Talking Health in the 406, where we are one community under the big sky. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jones, the Program Manager of the DPHHS Montana Disability and Health Program, which supports the health and wellness of the disability community through positive community change and inclusive health resources. Speaking of health resources, today we will discuss parentingmontana.org, a digital resource hub for Montana families. Parentingmontana.org has tools to address everyday parenting challenges using a 5-step process that grows the skills our children need to be successful. Our guests to talk about the incredible resource of parentingmontana.org are the experts Dr. Carrie Finley and Barbara Hopkin, who played a significant role in developing the tools and resources you will find on the website. So grateful to have Carrie Finley and Barb Hopkin here with parentingmontana.org. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll hop right into hearing more about the impact that parentingmontana.org has and the role model it is across the nation. Carrie, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your role with or connection to Parenting Montana.
My name is Dr. Carrie Finley, and I am a research scholar and the director of the Center for Health and Safety Culture at Montana State University. I've been involved with parentingmontana.org really since the project began, and I was one of the original developers of some of those tools and resources that are available on the website. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, in addition to being a researcher, and then I'm also a parent, and so I've used this website many times in my own parenting.
Barb, tell us about yourself and your connection to Parenting Montana.
So I am a sponsored research support professional for the Center for Health and Safety Culture. My background is in education and in mental health. I've worked with kids and families as a teacher, as a licensed counselor, and I worked in schools as a counselor as well. For the center, I supported work on the tools and resources provided for parentingmontana.org. And like Carrie, I've also used the website in my own parenting with my 2 daughters.
So it sounds like you both have a lot of experience, not just creating the tools, but using the tools. Can you describe to our listeners, what does parentingmontana.org have to offer parents?
I'd love to answer that. Parentingmontana.org really offers tools and resources for parents and really anyone who has a role in supporting kids. The resources that are on parentingmontana.org are created for parents and caregivers who are caring for infants all the way through the teen years. And on the website, parents can click the age of their child. So if they have a child that's 7 or 15 or 2, they can click on the age of their child and then find a wide range of tools to explore. And the tools include really everyday issues that we face as parents and caregivers of our kids. The tools and resources that are on the website were created to meet the needs of Montana parents. And to do that, we asked Montana parents. We asked them what they needed. And they gave us a lot of feedback about topics that they wanted to see on the website, issues that they were, addressing with their kids. So, for example, the tools that are on parentingmontana.org that relate to technology use really came directly from parents in Montana. We're all, as parents and caregivers, I think, trying to figure out how to navigate this world full of screens and technology. And so that was an example of where parents were like, hey, this is a thing that we're doing that we need some support with. Other examples of tools are things like, building resilience. How do we help our kids to build resilience? Chores. We all are, working on chores and helping our kids to develop those habits. Peer pressure. How do we address and work with our kids to address peer pressure or establishing rules for, alcohol use or substance use with our teens? So a lot of different tools and resources. And I think one of the coolest things about parentingmontana.org is that everything is based on a 5-step process. So as parents and caregivers, like once you learn that process, no matter what's going on with your child, no matter what issue you're working on or what challenge you're working on with your kid, it becomes this way of working together through those challenges or struggles. I think that's one of the unique pieces about parentingmontana.org, that it's this process that can help me or me communicate with my son and really build that relationship. Barb, what would you add?
I just think there's so much to offer on the website. And in addition to all of the tools or some of the tools that Carrie was mentioning, there's also a section called I Want to Know More. And that's really just when parents stop and think, wait a second, there's something more additional information I need here. And it covers topics such as really intentional ways to grow that healthy parenting relationship, how to intentionally communicate with our kids. There's resources around infant crying, preparing for a child in foster care. There's also resources around mental health. So there are just so many topics to explore for parents that I feel like spending time on the website really does have tools and resources for everyone.
That's incredible. I'm not a parent, but I have many friends that are, and I've heard over and over there's no rule book or there's no guidebook on parenting, but it sounds like parentingmontana.org gets to that point, like provides the resources that parents are looking for that haven't had access to before, except trial and error or talking to friends. Have you heard that from folks that this is the guidebook that they've been looking for?
Yeah, I think we have heard that, especially in that they can use the process and adapt it, right? They can adapt it to their own family needs, to their values, to the things that they're working on with their kids. It's not a script by any means, but more of like this process that you can use when you're dealing with any kind of issue. And I think parents have found that to be really valuable, that they have this tool, this process that they can use and apply and adapt and make it flexible to meet their own needs as a family.
And I think parents also find it really useful when things do feel tough or there is a struggle. It's something to fall back on, to reference, to practice. It just gives a framework to work on those things that are really challenging and hard to know where to start sometimes. If you have a process to follow and some tools to guide you, it makes those topics a lot more accessible to have these important conversations as families and with kids.
So you've mentioned the tools and resources and the process within parentingmontana.org. What collaborators participated in the development of these resources? Who was a part of that team?
Oh my gosh. When I think about parentingmontana.org, it has just, I think, been a labor of love for experts and researchers and partners in the field of child development and parenting, and has really grown over the years, really relying on experts and researchers and those partners to create these tools and resources that have this evidence base, that are vetted by parents, that they've used these tools and resources. The Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services partnered with us at the Center for Health and Safety Culture at MSU to create the website. But this has been such a collaborative effort to promote, the healthy emotional and mental and behavioral growth of Montana's children. I think the website is meant to help parents like actively grow their child's skills. Skills like self-awareness and self-management and relationships. And it has just been a collaboration of so many different partners coming together for this effort.
There have been so many people that have really put their heart into this, that have the best interest of kids and families and parents. And it's really amazing to see how all of those different experts come together to bring the tools and resources.
So it sounds like Montana has this incredible resource for the parents there. And of course, people across the nation can use parentingmontana.org. It's available to anyone who goes to the website. Are there parenting.org websites in other states? And if so, has Montana been a role model in helping to develop those other websites?
Yes. So Parenting Montana has been used as a model for other communities, which is really awesome because the platform stays the same, but we were really able to tailor the content and what that specific community and those specific parents felt would be most useful to them. So it really is a model that we can build with other states or other communities who might be interested in bringing something similar to their own communities with the flexibility to really make it specific to their needs.
That's great. I feel like I'm going to just go home and share this with all of my friends that have kids of all ages. And even as someone who might have kids in the future, I'm curious about what this 5-step parenting process looks like. Can you go into more depth about what that 5-step process is and how parents can use it?
Absolutely. When I think about the parenting process, the 5-step process, it's really, if you think about it as a way of interacting with your child. So it's not a script. It's not like you have to follow it step by step all the time, but it's this way of approaching any of those issues that you're working on with your child. It's a way of interacting. And so when we think of the 5 steps, the first one is to get input, then to teach, practice, support, and then recognize. And those are the 5 steps that you can apply to any issue regardless of the age of your child. And so once parents or caregivers, grandparents, others who are interacting with children kind of get used to those steps, it really becomes this natural way of interacting. And those steps are flexible, like I said. And so parents don't have to like follow them like a script, but just more like as a way of interacting or a way of guiding them through a conversation or a topic or an issue with their kids. And I think through this process, skills that we're trying to build as parents are things like confidence and resilience and helping them to learn to make healthy choices. And this parenting process really does support them in growing those skills in their child so that their child better able, to manage emotions or make those better decisions and choices that they have for their kids.
If I wanted to get started today using parentingmontana.org and the 5-step parenting process, what does that look like? If I were to open up the website and say I had a 12-year-old child or a middle schooler that was having some challenges with routine, what's that process look like?
First of all, just getting on parentingmontana.org. And I think parents sometimes find it helpful. They can start with those I want to know more resources that Barb was talking about, things like intentional communication or building that healthy parent-child relationship. Or we also have a getting started tab on the website. And that's like a really great place for parents and caregivers to begin because that like shares with them the process and helps them to get started. And then there are options to read the tool, to listen to it, or to watch content where parents can, take a screenshot or they can print it or they can have access to all of these resources on the go by listening to them. So I think that getting started tab is a really great place to get going. And then in addition to the tools and things like that, there's also like summaries. So it's like the quick, easy version of the tool. So a parent doesn't have to have the whole tool in front of them, but maybe they just want a summary of it to print or put somewhere so that they can get an easy reminder about those steps or the process that they want to use. And then as parents get more comfortable, I think, in the process, then they don't need to rely so much on, making sure they have the exact tool, but really just leaning into, hey, I have this process that I can use.
And I think a lot of times after parents go through the getting started and some of the I want to know more pieces, Then they'll dive into the tools, which are arranged by age. So you brought up a 12-year-old, they can go to the 12-year-old tab, and then all of the tools for 12-year-olds come up to explore what might be a comfortable place for them to start implementing the process with the tool. So I've always appreciated the way that the website is organized. After you've become familiar and looked at the I want to know more and the getting started, then you can really sort by age what are some topics that might be most helpful.
And I know, Mackenzie, you asked, what does this look like for parents for routines? And I don't know, maybe it would be fun. I know both Barb and I both have children. And so if it sounds interesting, we could walk through just what that process looks like for an issue like routines. I have a 12-year-old and Barb has an 8 and a 10-year-old, so different ages. And so it might be kind of fun to see about or talk through an issue like routines and what does that process look like for those different ages.
Let's do it. I would love to hear the differences between the two ages and the approach you and Barb take as different parents.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that too. And I've definitely seen the way that my own girls have grown their independence and their confidence through practicing and using this process and really having it just become a way of how we interact. So I think it would be a great idea to talk through one of these tools, the routines tool specifically.
I think routines is such a big issue for parents and caregivers of all ages of children. So it's kind of fun to take a really common issue like this and walk through it. So Barb, let's start. When you think about routines and your girls ages 8 and 10, talk through what does that look like for that first step of input?
Routines are definitely a big topic at our house. It feels like we really try to be consistent, but then there's a shift, a new activity comes on board, or it's vacation time, or it's back to school time. There's always a chance to readjust and reset a routine. But when I think about how the tool is most helpful with routines, mornings were especially challenging for my 8-year-old. She would just lose focus on getting ready and she'd play with her dog or start drawing and just enjoy the morning, which led to us being late and started the day with just stress and frustration for everyone involved. So that was a great opportunity for us to use the routine tool. And step one in the parenting process and in the tools is to gain input. So to gain input with my 8-year-old, I just asked her what would be helpful for her to get ready on time without feeling like I was nagging or rushing her or she was stressed. I asked her specifically, what are the things that need done for you to be ready for school? I asked her, what are some of the things you enjoy doing in the morning that you wish you had time for? And then I just asked her what can be hard about getting ready on time. So I asked her a lot of open-ended questions to start a conversation and get her ideas. And as we talked, she had ideas like, oh, I'd really like to have a checklist that I got to check off as I got ready with all the things on it. I need to get dressed. I need to eat breakfast. I need to have a fresh water bottle filled, brush my teeth, all those morning things. And then she suggested, I think I just need more time. Could I get up a little earlier? That's part of my struggle. And then she really kept coming back to, I do want some time with my dog in the morning. That's important to me. So just hearing her out really led to a great conversation about what she would envision to be successful in the morning. And when I really practiced actively listening and took time to give her space to share her ideas, she was much more excited and she had buy-in to start this plan and work on this plan together. She wanted to write the list. She wanted to show it to her dad and sister. So I think that gaining input piece is huge in having kids feel heard, really truly having them want to buy into whatever the plan might be, in this case, routines, and start the conversation off on a really great foot.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that with my 12-year-old son too. Now that I've been engaged in this process, this parenting process for years, and what I noticed is that get input, that first step, absolutely, my son has come to expect that. Like he knows that I want his input, and he loves to give it to me. And And so I think that has created this really respectful, like, I really do want to hear what he has to say about whatever issue we're talking about. And I feel like that has, as he's grown and gotten older, that's really helped in our relationship too, just to like be an active listener and really trying to understand what he is trying to, what he's wanting to tell me. So that's the first step in the process. And then the second step is to teach. And teaching is such an important piece of this. And teaching is really helping us to get those skills and build those skills in our children. So what does that sound like, Barb, for you, for your 8-year-old when you think about teach?
So teaching for me, I really had to learn when I started using the process of it's not something you want to rush. You don't want to assume that your child knows exactly how you're envisioning things to go. So really slowing down and modeling what I want to see is key. So I really try to teach when we're not rushed, we're not tired. So when it came to morning routines for my daughter, I sat with her while she made her list and supported her to add the things she needed to do. I talked to her about things like, hey, let's think about the weather. That will impact which clothes you pick without assuming that she knows that it's going to be snowing and she needs her extra layers. She wanted to pack her own lunch. So I really slowed down to teach her what things are important in a healthy lunch. You need to have some protein and some fruit and veggies. So not assuming, oh, she can make her own lunch. Great. I really slowed down and taught her and modeled for her watching me what it looked like to pack a healthy lunch. So it's really about when you have the time, slowing down, talking through, and modeling the steps of what you'd like to see. How's that different with your 12-year-old, Carrie?
I think it's really similar, actually. It's just, I think now my son is ready to take on more responsibility. So, like, I was just thinking about an example for myself and my son's for routine. Right now, it's like basketball season. And so, getting ready for those basketball competitions on the weekends, like, what does that look like? How can my son be ready for that? And setting him up to do that well. And, making sure he has his water bottle, making sure that he's packed his basketball bag and that he has, all the things that he needs for that basketball tournament. And so teaching and then allowing him to do that. I think that's really that teach step, is making sure that he has those skills that he needs to do it well, to do that process. And then the third step is to practice. And I think that really goes hand in hand with teach. It's like giving the opportunity for our kids to practice and not do it perfectly and to coach along the way. What does that look like?
So for our morning routine, we made sure to practice on a Saturday. We didn't have anywhere to be. We weren't in a hurry. We weren't tired. I had her go through all of the steps as if it were a school day, but without the pressure in my mind of knowing we needed to be out the door. So she practiced making her lunch, even though she didn't need one that day and she could just have it later or whenever. And while we were practicing, it was great that we were doing this on a Saturday because we realized that with her pace and the way she likes to go about the morning, she really did need a solid extra 10 minutes to go through that routine so we could plan for that when it really counted on a school day. And we were able to have the conversation that because she really does want some time with her dog, that extra 10 minutes is important. And I was also around in that practice morning to offer some gentle reminders while she practiced, like Carrie's saying, to just kind of coach her through if she got sidetracked. But the practice piece when the stakes aren't high really allows that confidence to grow and for adjustments to be made when needed.
Yeah. So I think it's like, get input and then teach and then practice. And then that fourth step in this process is to support them and let them do that work. And so when you think about support, Barb, what does that look like?
Support for my daughter in the morning looks like me checking in and asking her how she felt about her routine the night before. Like, do you feel ready? Do you have your list? Are your clothes out? I asked her to show me that she was ready to use her list. So she got it out and set it next to her clothes and was excited about it. And that morning, supporting looked like really noticing what she was doing well. So I said to her, I noticed that you remembered to add fruit to your lunch. That's awesome. Thanks for doing that. And then when she did get distracted and started playing with her dog, that support looks like a gentle reminder, like, oh, remember your next step, or what's the next step on your list. And then also, when we got through the morning and we were driving to school, we had some reflection time together to ask her, like, how do you feel like that went? So the support step is just being there as needed for the bumps along the way, especially in the beginning when they're starting that new routine.
Yeah. And I think supporting for my 12-year-old, well, it looks very similar. It starts to look a little different too, in that it's like finding that balance between noticing and gently reminding while still giving my son the space to work through it on his own and to make mistakes when they come along, And so it's like finding that balance of supporting, but also as he's getting older to take on that responsibility to make it happen. And then to support him along the way. So I really feel like, for my son, when we think about basketball competitions, it was really about he doesn't like to get up early. And so instead, like, what are the things he could do to pack his bag the night before and get himself ready so that that morning wasn't so stressful for him. And then I think the final step in the parenting process is to recognize. And it's always fun for me, I think, as a parent, to recognize the effort that I see my son making and the progress that I see him making, regardless of whatever issue that we're working on.
Yeah. And I think in recognizing, as we're talking through our routines example, it's really about watching for what she was trying really hard to do well and let her know that I saw very specifically. So I noticed that you have your clothes laid out for tomorrow morning already. Way to be responsible. I see you going through your checklist and marking off your steps. Thanks so much for helping this morning go smoothly. So it's really looking for chances to recognize what they're doing. So there's this shift for a lot of parents in noticing the things that are going well rather than noticing the things that are going wrong. And that's really a powerful thing with kids. And it leads to other fun things, like because we're in the car on time and no one's rushed or stressed, we had time to listen to an extra song together before I dropped her off. So there's also some natural pieces within recognizing that are built in with more time for fun. So I think recognizing is just a really powerful motivator and also shifts our own thinking about our kids. We're focusing on the positive.
Yeah. When I think about recognition for my 12-year-old, it's like you said, just as important today, I think, as it was when he was little, because it leads to that, like, the confidence, and I see that confidence grow. And then it's me as a parent, I think, specifically recognizing that and recognizing that effort. It's like the high five on the way to the game, or the comments that, it's nice to not feel so rushed on our way, or it's just those small little times of recognition that I seek out, and I think really makes a difference in our relationship. That I'm really focused on what he's doing well, and not the parent that's like, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? What could have that, and not focusing so much on what's going wrong.
Yeah, I think it's so true. When kids feel proud of what they're doing, it grows that lasting motivation that really becomes intrinsic, and then they want to keep doing things that help their day go more smoothly and help their relationship. So I think it's a great way to connect and build on the relationship that's at the foundation of all we do as parents.
That was an incredible overview of how to use the 5-step parenting process. Both of you gave detailed examples of how you use it in your life with your kids and how it leads to positive experiences for the kiddos and building that relationship between you and the kid. I'm encouraged to know that resources like this exist to support parents. And I just want to emphasize those 5 steps. So what I gained from it is to ask your child for input around the topic. Find teachable moments. Let them practice. support using gentle reminders, and recognize what went well.
Yes, I think that is like the best synopsis of just the parenting process. You got it.
Awesome. And I feel like I can even use that in my own life with friends or my parents or my partners. So it feels transferable. And I love that. It's a positive approach to making small changes that lead to more fun and more time for fun and joy in those relationships.
It's interesting that you say that. I have had parents tell me that once they got used to using the process, they found themselves gaining input from coworkers and their partners and going through the steps in other areas of their lives.
That's cool. That's how I see that I could use it now in my life. So thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and sharing your experience with your kiddos. So I am curious, how can parentingmontana.org support or even improve the health of parents and children? I know on the website you talk about in the I want to know more sections about mental health and risky behavior and trauma. How can this website and the 5-step process support improving health?
There are so many people who are a part of kids' lives that could benefit from accessing these resources, whether that's parents or grandparents or relatives or daycare providers, coaches, teachers. It just really is transferable to anyone who is working or supporting kids, anyone who spends time with kids and teens. We know that parenting and caregiving, it's not easy, and that we all face these daily challenges with our kids, and we all want to do our best too. So I think it's really parentingmontana.org is for anyone who is interested in improving their relationships with their child, and growing those skills. And so I think the website helps in a number of different ways. And you mentioned how does it improve the health? I think it improves the parent-child relationship, but there are also specific tools and resources on parentingmontana.org that really it can be used as a starting point for really challenging conversations. So things like mental health and trauma and risky behaviors that our kids are going to experience. And so there are tools and resources that are on the website that really do focus specifically on those risky behaviors and those mental health issues that we might be addressing as parents and caregivers. So I feel like it's the website definitely has those resources as well.
And in those segments that talk about mental health, risky behavior, and supporting your child through trauma, is it encouraged that 5-step process is used through those topics, or is there a different process that's talked about on the website throughout those sections?
So I would say there's a variety to help work through if a child is having anxiety, and then you would use the process. But there's also in the I want to know more, and even in the podcast, different topics that are explored. For example, how does alcohol affect the growing teenage brain? And it's the facts, and it still opens, though, these great conversations with kids. So I feel like while the I want to know more pieces that often cover some of these topics don't necessarily follow this 5-step process in that format, you still end up gaining input and having these amazing conversations and teaching some facts that help kids make informed decisions and supporting them and all of those things. So while the I want to know more pieces don't follow the 5-step process in that specific order, the way of communicating with your child that comes through on the website is incorporated everywhere.
Yeah. And I would add those I want to know more resources that are on the website really help, I think, build the parents' knowledge so that they can feel really informed and can have those conversations using that process. So it's like giving them a little bit of background, like what does alcohol do with the teenage brain, or what does trauma look like, and how do we support our kids in that? And it gives just that like background for parents then to enter into the conversation with their kids about these risky behaviors or these risky issues or mental health or trauma or other important challenges that parents face.
Thank you for describing the differences there and how those sections can support conversations with or between the parents and the kid. I did notice that you have a podcast on your website. And what topics do you cover there, and how can listeners access that media resource?
The podcast is under the media tab on the website, and there are several different podcasts. And one of those is just introducing the tools for your child success podcast. So that's just an overview of introducing the tools and what it's about. There's a podcast on guidance and discipline for skill building, which is definitely a topic parents are interested in a lot. Intentional ways to grow a healthy parenting relationship. That relationship is so foundational to everything we do with kids. And the parenting process for success is kind of going through those steps like Carrie and I did today. There's the podcast on social and emotional development. There's one on communication. And then there's also one about having conversations about alcohol and drug use. So there's a variety, and they're all under the media tab.
I also think that one of the unique things about the podcast is there are experts that are talking about these issues, people who have been, that are very versed in child development, who, are experts in communication. And so really just listening to the podcast, and it can be fun on your drive as a parent or, to work or home from work, where you're just getting some information from people in the field who are working on these topics. And so I feel like it's a great way to cover some of the interests that parents have in a different way.
And can you access these podcasts on podcast platforms or apps?
Yes, any of the podcast platforms that people listen to.
Awesome. Thank you. So for our listeners, after you finish this podcast today, hop over to Parenting Montana and listen to a topic that interests you. So Carrie and Barb, you described working with your kid around using the 5-step process around the topic of routines. And that example, or those examples, went smoothly based on your explanation. Does the 5-step process always go smoothly? And what happens when parents or kids are having a really rough day?
Such a good point, Mackenzie, because no, there are definitely bumps in the road. And it doesn't always go smoothly. And even though I've been using the process for years, like it is, I really view it as just that. It's the process that can be altered or shifted based on the conversation and how it's going. It reminds me that when things aren't going smoothly, or like this isn't going the way that I had hoped it would with my son, like I can take a break. And I can, if I'm frustrated or angry or, stressed, I can just say, wait, like I got to slow down here for a minute. I got to take a break and calm down before we come back to this conversation. When we're working on struggles, our emotions can run a little hot. And so it's okay as parents. It's okay if it doesn't go exactly the way we intend it to in our head. And we can take a break, and we don't have to do it right then. We can take that time and calm down and then come back and work through that, come back and get more input, come back and teach or reteach, not in the rush to get out the door or not in the heat of the moment when I'm upset or frustrated, but I can come back at any time. So absolutely, it doesn't go perfectly every time, but I think that the process is flexible and that I can come back and reconnect at any time. We're trying to grow skills in our kids to build their confidence, and we can come back and do that at any time.
And I think parents need to know that there's such flexibility in moving back and forth between the steps. They're not always linear. They don't need to always go in order. So that kind of takes some of the pressure off too. And knowing that, oh, I need to gain a little more input here, or I need to reteach this. And I think what Carrie was talking about of taking those breaks as a parent when emotions are running high is so important in order for learning to happen, but also such incredible modeling for our kids that, yes, we all have emotions and they get big sometimes, and it's okay to step away and use some coping skills. And so I think when things go not as planned, it's actually sometimes the biggest opportunity for learning, especially when everyone is able to calm down and come back to the conversation at an appropriate time, even if it's an hour later or even if it's the next day, depending on what's gone on. Talking about it when everyone is in a good place to do so makes it much more apt to be a learning experience.
I can imagine that takes off some of that stress of I have to follow this exactly, and some people might feel like themselves or their kid doesn't follow a linear path, and so doing what you need to do as a parent to take time for yourself or give the kiddos some time before reapproaching and trying again, reminding ourselves to be gentle and to do what feels right in the moment. So, what if a new challenge comes up that isn't directly addressed by parentingmontana.org at this time? How can parents seek additional resources or adapt resources to help answer those new challenges?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great question because when you get on to parentingmontana.org and you look at, your 8-year-old or your 5-year-old and you put their age and then you can see all of the different tools that are there. Um, you may be, as a parent or a caregiver, working on something that isn't there. And while there are lots of tools, it's really coming back to that process because no matter what the issue that you're working on, you have this skill as a parent to like address that issue with that process. And so even if the exact issue isn't on the website, you can take that process and use it and follow the same steps, get input. And then what is it that you want to teach and ultimately have happen with your kid? How can they practice that whatever it is that you're teaching? And then how can you support them along the way and ultimately also recognize them and their effort in doing whatever it is that you're working on? And so I really do think it comes back to this idea that it's about the process. And regardless of the issue, parents have that tool. They have that skill that they can rely on.
By going through the website, I wasn't quite sure if parentingmontana.org also has coaching resources and what that process looks like, if that is available to parents.
Parentingmontana.org website does not have coaching resources. But when we talk about coaching, we actually completed an evaluation of parentingmontana.org. And that evaluation was led by Dr. Kaylin Green. And in that evaluation, we used a coach. Actually, Barb was that coach. And she worked specifically with parents in those coaching sessions to use the tools and resources on parentingmontana.org. Our goal in that was then to evaluate it. And so we implemented this coaching process with a group of parents, and then we evaluated and interviewed those parents 1 year later. So the coaching element really came in through this evaluation, that we wanted to better understand if the tools and resources on parentingmontana.org could be utilized by parents, were being utilized by parents, and then what kind of issues were they grappling with that then we could reflect and help them with in future tools and resources. So that's where the coaching piece came in with evaluating parentingmontana.org. And what we found in that evaluation, there were some really interesting findings that we found. Things like parents were much more comfortable and confident in using the parenting process over time. So while it might feel a little unusual to start, like after parents had used it a bit with their kids, that they grew in their own confidence and comfort in using that process. We also learned in interviewing parents a year later that many parents said that they continued to use it into the future. So even when they weren't, with a coach or understanding it and having that coaching experience, that they used that process well into the future. And that once they got familiar with it, they started to use it almost as a process out of habit. They also reported that they continued to use at least parts of the process long after they first used parentingmontana.org. So sometimes parents reported that they used just a few of the steps. And other times parents use the entire process to communicate with their child about a particular issue. So we did learn that there is some flexibility and that parents were able to adapt it and use it in different ways when they were communicating with their child. We learned from parents that they really did feel like it helped in their communication and their relationship with their kids. The evaluation showed improvements in things like problem solving and emotion regulation and conflict resolution, and that those outcomes were sustained for parents. So that's where that coaching piece came from. It was really an evaluation that we wanted to do of parentingmontana.org.
Thank you for clarifying that. Even though coaching isn't available now, what a wonderful way to measure the successes and challenges and talk to parents that are using it in real time about what issues they are focusing on and how they adapted it to make it work for them. And that's public health. I love that the research that you did to make sure that the resources available are meeting the needs of parents, and that the process and the website has the resources so that parents feel like they can do this. They have the resources there available to them to try it. And Barb, as the coach during that evaluation, I wonder, what did you gain from that? Did you identify any specific challenges or successes you wanted to share today?
Yes, I loved the experience of getting to be with parents and to coach through the parenting process. It was just a lot of fun to see their success and to work through the challenges and to see that it truly was making a difference in their families. And I think just some common challenges that came up. One of the things that parents talked about is just figuring out the time, because everyone's busy in our world. And so helping them to think through, okay, I know the process, I know the tool, I'm going to have the summary available to me, whether printed or on my phone. And I'm going to think of the most appropriate calm time that I can open up this conversation and gain some input. For some parents, it was in the car on a drive. For some parents, they went for a walk together. For some parents, it was in the morning over breakfast. So really kind of just jumping into that gaining input piece at an appropriate time was the first step into them seeing the value and hearing the ideas that their child came up with. And then as they worked through the teaching and the practicing and the supporting and the reinforcing, they did find time for it as they saw that it was making a difference in their families and in their world. So I think initially that timing piece of figuring out, oh, I'm kind of nervous to start this, it's going to feel awkward, was a little challenging. And then once they jumped in and saw the benefit, it became a priority for them. It was also interesting in just hearing from parents topics that they wanted, that once they learned the process, we could work through anything together because they knew the process. As Carrie was saying, you can apply it to any topic. Technology use and setting boundaries with screens came up a lot, and there's a tool for that as now. Friendships for younger kids came up, and chores. So it was really interesting to see what different parents wanted to work on, what was going on for them. And it also really helped me see that the tools have so much value because there wasn't one that everybody wanted. Everybody had a unique experience and different tools fit them and what was going on at that time for them the most. So it was a great experience, and I'm very thankful that I got to work with parents in that way.
Thank you, Barb, for sharing.
I did think of one other thing that I thought was really awesome about that experience. So I watched parents become more confident I really noticed that they started taking each day as a fresh start to try again, right? If they had a misstep or it didn't go well, each day is a fresh start to try to process again. And just reiterating that parents aren't perfect and that the way that we repair harm with our kids is such powerful modeling. You get to try again, right? So I thought that was a huge piece that was highlighted for me through the coaching, just that none of us are perfect. We can try again. And when we repair with our children, it's very powerful.
That's really inspiring to know that parents felt more confident through the process by knowing that they could try again, that they don't have to be perfect for this process to succeed. Thank you, both of you, sharing the perspectives that you had along with the parents that went through that evaluation. So my background and my work is with the Montana Disability and Health Program. So within public health, I'm always thinking about how are the resources and the programs and the services that we're providing inclusive and accessible to people with disabilities. And in this case, how does parentingmontana.org address the differences that kids with disabilities might have? For example, establishing healthy eating habits or even routines may look different for a kid with autism than a kid that's neurotypical. How is the parenting process still inclusive for kids with disabilities?
When I think about engaging with our kids, even kids in the same household have unique differences and challenges. And so I really think when parents focus on healthy communication and that teaching and modeling and giving their kids, no matter where they're at, that chance to practice and then supporting them, you can really fit that into any of your unique child needs. And so you may have to adapt it slightly. Maybe it's slower. Maybe you have to take more time. So I think it's really like being able to use the process as a process, not a script, and then adapting it to meet the needs of your own kids, no matter, what their challenges or what they're working on. It does really allow for that, to have parents bring in their own set of values, bring in their own unique way of communicating. It's just this process that can help and support that.
This is my turn to say yes. I love hearing that. I know when I approach disability and thinking about inclusion, it's not about the disability itself or the diagnosis. It's about what support needs that person has, whether it's a child or an adult. You're looking at that person's unique support needs and how we're meeting those needs with the resources, with parents or support staff, or just extra time or changing language. And so approaching this process in that way for any kid, whether they have a disability or not, you're working with kids and parents that have unique backgrounds and unique experiences, that type of adaptation is necessary across the board. So parents are busy. What are some of the ways parents can access content in a way that works for their lifestyle and schedule?
So yeah, working on the website over the years, we really heard from parents in Montana that they needed accessible content that was convenient to their busy lives. So many of the tools, as well as the I Want to Know More resources, have audio options. So parents can listen to those while they're going about their daily routines. There are also the summaries that we've mentioned of the tools available for a quicker view and reference. And then also those videos to help parents get started and understand the 5-step process, or an additional way to access, as well as the podcast that we mentioned. So we really try to give parents the flexibility to go as in-depth or the lighter version as possible and listen or view or read in different formats.
Thank you, Barb, for describing the different types of resources and platforms that are available so that parents' needs are met when they want to access the information, but they're on the road or they're at home or just in different circumstances. As I said earlier, I'm also thinking about accessibility for parents with differing communication needs, whether they need something in audio or they need something in large font or accessible to a screen reader. Your formats seem to address those needs.
We've definitely made adjustments, updates, and upgrades to the website over the years. We just recently had another round. So I think we're always looking for ways to make the website accessible to the most people.
I think that's great. As someone who is thinking about accessibility, and so I just want to say thank you for doing that and recognizing that often we talk about kids with disabilities, but adults and parents also have disabilities and how we're meeting people where they are at. So thank you. Is there other evidence you wanted to share or stories you wanted to share about how Parenting Montana is or has been effective for parents?
One thing that we haven't talked about is there are resources on the website for school and for different agencies that might want to engage parents with the tools and the resources on Parenting Montana's. So in addition to the parenting resources, there's community resources that those in the community might want to access so they can share with the people caring for children in their lives about what's available to them on Parenting Montana.
To add to that, thinking about like healthcare providers, they're a really trusted resource for parents. And so there's resources on there to support healthcare providers in getting the information to parents. Same thing with schools. Schools interact with parents and kids all the time, every day. And so there are resources for schools.
Thank you so much for sharing all that you have today with your experience as a parent, as a social worker, mental health professional. It's incredible to see the resources that have been developed in order to support parents of Montana and beyond. What key takeaways or wrap-up message do you want to share to the listeners today?
I think just that parenting is not easy, and we really, truly all do our best. And that parentingmontana.org is such a valuable resource in offering a process and tools to follow when facing challenges or when celebrating successes, and just the ability to really intentionally communicate with our kids helps build that healthy relationship that's the foundation of all that we do with kids. So I think the process really facilitates healthy relationships and healthy communication and helping our kids grow the problem-solving skills they need for their whole life.
I think I would add that as parents and caregivers, if we want to change the way that we're interacting with our children or grow those stronger, healthier relationships, we can start slow. We just have to start. We can start anywhere to interact in a different way, to build those skills. And to start learning that process. And then before you know it, like it's just another way of communicating. It's the way that we approach our children or the way that we approach a situation through all of the parenting challenges and the, life up and downs. Parents are so important in their child's life, and they truly do shape the way that children see themselves and that they see others in the world. I think parentingmontana.org is a resource to help parents in that journey, to raise healthy kids and to raise healthy kids in Montana.
Thank you for listening to the Talking Health in the 406 podcast, where we are one community under the big sky. I am your host, Mackenzie Jones. We'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Carrie Finley and Barbara Hopkin, for so clearly teaching us about parentingmontana.org. I can't wait to share this resource with my friends and family and start practicing the 5-step process myself. If you would like more information on what you heard today, visit our website at talkinghealthinthe406.mt.gov. If you haven't already, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.